After we walked a couple blocks away from the Kobayashi Corporation building, I finally stopped to catch my breath. Are you sure she did everything correctly? No, but I don't want to check. You don't need much time to open a letter, read it, and call security. Yeah, I guess. Kagome looked very satisfied with herself, and that seemed completely inappropriate to me for the situation. I didn't feel as happy that my plan worked out as I had expected. Instead, I was overwhelmed by exhaustion that smelled like an old duvet, like old dust and damp. The only thing I wanted was to go to bed and forget myself in a heavy, cloudy, stuffy dream, and wake up in the middle of the night sweaty, exhausted, and powerless. Nico-san? Kagome looked up at me in surprise. Work's done. Have your fun. And I quickly walked off in the direction of my home. Stars don't spend loads of effort on an ineffective processing of matter into energy, but convert the elements in their cores directly. People, on the other hand, have to wait for hundreds of millions of years for dinosaur fossils to turn into oil and gas, then extract them, put them in containers to sell to other people so that their stoves would work properly just so a wayward girl can cook dinner. I was sitting behind the kitchen table, desperate for my food to come. Hunger, as always, had pushed all other thoughts to the background. I didn't know what would happen to my life next. Would I have to meet Ellie, who believed I had had a hand in her kidnapping, every day at school? Meet her, greet her, give her a cute smile, and strike up some small talk? It was hard to imagine that such a thing was possible. But that wasn't even the main issue. Nico-san, please call grandfather over for dinner. Alright. I begrudgingly stood up and went to Maruyuki-san, who was sitting motionlessly on the porch, apparently preoccupied with his thoughts.
Kagome-chan, you seem happier. Did anything good happen?
No, nothing much, Kagome answered without any hesitation, flashing a wide smile. Her reply annoyed me, and I had a hard time hiding it. Does this all seem funny to you? What does, Nico-san? Of course, we couldn't discuss Ellie's kidnapping and the ransom in front of her grandfather. All this. You know what I mean. I don't, Nico-san. She spoke calmly, but her eyes were burning with persistence so adamant that I had to give it up. Sometimes you meet a person that emanates almost tangible willpower that crackles in the air like before a storm. Then you realize it's pointless to argue because he, or she, will inevitably do whatever they want. Moreover, you feel you can't help but respect someone like that, no matter what their motives and objectives are. Naturally, it was weird that a normal Japanese girl was making me think that.
Kagome-chan, I've totally forgotten, but have we called Auntie Nautical?
We have, grandfather.
So what did she say?
Kagome looked at me as if I were eavesdropping, but still replied to her grandfather. She said they're still renovating the house. I knew that conversation indirectly involved me, as renovating the house might mean they had nowhere to go at the moment. But it would be impolite, to say the least, to start arguing in front of Maruyuki-san.
Is that so?
The old man replied and focused on the food, as if having forgotten that we were also here. I was always surprised and even scared by this ability of elderly people to disconnect themselves from reality in an instant. But it really wasn't a good time to go over Kagome's housing prospects. It was probably even dangerous to send Iwamura and her grandfather to live somewhere else before we resolved the matter with Ellie. Nico-san? What? It appears to me that you wanted to say something. When things started to appear to you, cross yourself. That's a saying we have in Russia. I snapped at her and stared at my plate as well. We finished dinner, but the vague feeling of an oncoming catastrophe was only growing stronger as night approached. Yeah, no shit. Kagome was doing her homework, sitting behind the kotatsu, while I walked back and forth looking for something that could distract me from my disturbing thoughts. Nico-san, stop running around the place, she said without a hint of anger. Sorry I don't have your cold blood. You'll have plenty of walking to do tonight. Tonight? The vague premonitions began to take form. Unless, of course, you think Kobayashi could use a diet. She smirked, clearly satisfied with herself. Ellie did indeed have to be fed, at least once a day. But the memories of yesterday made my head spin. The dark warehouse was a torture chamber in my mind, to which nobody would return of their own free will. Don't think I'm forcing you. Kagome smiled cunningly, and it became unbearably hard to stay in the same room as her. She wasn't just reminding me of my own sin, but making sure I knew it wasn't over yet. You were handling it just fine on your own before. Nico-san, are you that ashamed to be around Kobayashi? Well, you don't seem to be ashamed in the slightest. As if I would be, she exclaimed with indignation. What you're doing, it's not only about Ellie. It's unacceptable to do to any human being. We are doing, Nico-san. Does it make you feel better that you found an accomplice? We've already talked about that, Nico-san. Yes, but I still don't understand what you want from me. I want help. You promised to help, don't you remember? You always turn my words against me. What? Don't you pay attention to what you say? It's getting more and more difficult for me to argue with her. I felt guilty about Ellie, scared for my life, but at the same time, I couldn't drop everything and put myself at Kobayashi-Jun's mercy. And it wasn't just that, I didn't believe he had any. Maybe I want to help, but you make me do such things. Most importantly, you leave me no choice. Why, you have a choice. I can just as easily go alone. Then why even ask? No reason. Just, by the way. So, you aren't coming with me today? What have you got for her? I also wanted to ask where Kagome got the money, but decided not to. Sure, I worked at a restaurant, but I'm not going to make anything gourmet for Kobayashi. She should be happy she isn't starving. Kagome yet again showed extreme hostility toward Ellie. Maybe I'd better go with her, just to make sure everything went fine. Anything could be considered fine in this situation. I wish you were stuck in that warehouse for a day. There must be stuffy and hot at day and cold at night. Well, bring her a blanket, Kagome said, clearly without thinking. Hey, that's a great idea. I immediately ran to the drawers looking for a blanket. Nico-san. Kagome realized what she'd done, but it was too late. It's not that cold there. Didn't it bother you whether I went with you or not just a minute ago? Fine. Don't forget a pillow, too. Kagome scoffed, stood up, and went to put her grandfather to bed. Today, the trip to the abandoned warehouse came easier to me. Kagome was quiet all the way there, even avoiding looking at me. Not that I was eager to continue our pointless conversation either. Kagome wouldn't change her mind unless something very serious happened. Humans generally try as hard as possible not to change what they believe, even if it goes against common sense. When we approached the warehouse, it felt as if an invisible force stopped me, preventing me from going further. Nico-san? Kagome addressed me for the first time in the last hour. You look like you've just seen a ghost. Well, if Ellie died there because of you, then... Here you go again. She sighed, straightened up, and frowned. I had to go all this way to realize I didn't want to be here at all. Sometimes the right choice takes too much emotional effort. It seemed easier to bear with condemnation for your cowardice. Nico-san, do you understand you have to be consistent? You could have released Kobayashi right away, gone to the police, handed me over to the corporation. But you didn't do any of that, yet you still kept self-flagellating over your conscience. Well, it's your decision. Just please, for the love of God, find something else to vent all your negativity at. Then why did you drag me here? You came yourself, she exclaimed much louder than necessary, almost disturbing the peace of the giant sleeping warehouse. I guess Kagome was right. I was probably trying to transfer my guilt to someone else. Since there was nobody but her around, I wasn't so much judging Kagome for kidnapping Ellie, as I just desperately wanted to avoid being involved in it. You know, fine, you're right. Go. I'll wait here. Really? She was genuinely surprised. Yes. I tried to make my voice sound as confident as possible, and apparently it worked. Well, as you wish, Kagome said and entered the warehouse. It appeared to me like an expression of happiness flashed on her face for just a moment. Being here alone, among these industrial ruins, would have been the most pleasant experience even under different circumstances. Just nearby, Ellie was suffering, tied up, and I couldn't help her, which made the entire situation simply unbearable. I couldn't... Why, actually? Who or what was stopping me? Kagome's argument was that we were in the same boat, and I was just as guilty as her. There's probably some truth to it, but wouldn't it be easier to do nothing then? The first choice of most living creatures in danger is to pretend to be dead. I guess Kagome was right. I really wasn't consistent. But I didn't know why and what to do next. The night was cold, and every time I exhaled, a cloud of steam came out of my mouth. The stars seemed to have hid somewhere, and it suddenly appeared to me that the entire world had been squeezed into a giant box, with a little bit of light finding its way from the outside. I was just looking at its dark blue lid, on which little white dots were drawn. Kagome returned faster than I expected. Is everything alright? You can go and check for yourself. I can, but I'm asking you. Everything is in order, as much as it can be. For a while I kept watching her face, trying to see signs of deception, but in the end I turned around and started walking toward the station. You coming? The entire way back I desperately wanted to know whether Ellie had asked about me, but I anticipated Kagome's reaction, so I didn't say a word. When we reached the station, she said, I'll call a taxi. Wait here. I was shifting from one foot to another, trying to warm up. Every step I had taken in the past several days seemed to bring me further and further away from common sense. It felt as if someone was controlling my life, like I was the character in a computer game. That'd be crazy, my guy. And that someone had no intention to get me a happy end. Don't you even, sir. Don't you even. You are where you are now because I'm intending to get you a fucking happy end. Don't you fucking talk shit about me, dickhole. I'm the only one here looking out for your ass. Kagome returned from the telephone box and shrugged. The taxi will only be here in half an hour. They said it's late. All the cars are busy. I see. I interrupted her. Nico-san, don't you feel cold? Why? Want to offer me your jumper? Her jumper did indeed look pretty warm, but I'd hardly be able to fit into it. But Kagome seemed to have not noticed my sarcasm. My restaurant was very close to this place. Just recently I thought I'd never get used to it, but now I already miss it. I wonder how my grandfather must feel. To be frank, Mariki-san didn't exactly seem devastated by woe. Maybe that was because he no longer always adequately perceived reality. We have to let Ellie go as soon as possible. I said suddenly, even to myself. What? This is wrong. This shouldn't be. We will, as soon as they release my father. What if... I worked up the courage and continued. What if they don't? Or they do, but Ellie doesn't make it that far? Do you understand that there isn't always a right and wrong solution? Sometimes every option is wrong, and we just have to accept the consequences. What do you mean by that? She asked coldly. I mean, we have to let Ellie go, as soon as possible. Are you going to do it now? Kagome tried to speak calmly, but I could hear a bit of anxiety in her voice. No, I probably had at least 24 hours or so. All the time in the world wouldn't make this decision any easier. To do the right thing, and put both me and Kagome in danger. We have to prepare. We can't be prepared for death. I had no energy to continue this argument. The taxi arrived after an hour. By then it had grown significantly colder outside. It was warmer in the car, but all the way home I felt like a side of beef in a refrigerator. When we finally reached home, Kagome immediately ran to the bathroom, but stopped in the doorway. You want to go first, Nico-san? Can it be that you're cold too, Yomura-san? I asked her sarcastically and slammed the door of my room much louder than I wanted to. My dream of treating myself to a warm bath wasn't fated to become reality. My darling bed and the duvet my parents had bought from Soviet sailors a couple of years ago enveloped me in the warmth I so badly desired, but I still couldn't manage to fall asleep. It seemed that, in the process of introspection, I had reached an important point, maybe even the point of no return, but I still didn't know what had to be done next. And if Kagome indeed was planning to drive both of us to the grave, I had to act on my own to avoid that. Except I didn't have even the outlines of a plan. Holy shit. I was woken by Kagome's grumbling and immediately felt that I was sick. My head was burning and the surrounding world looked unreal. Nico-san, I understand, but we still have to go to school. I'm sick. I moaned and turned to the other side. Sick? Kagome said with surprise, came closer and touched my forehead. How did you manage to get sick? I'm not going anywhere. Get off me. I had to cover my head with a pillow in order not to hear her anymore. Probably should have taken the bathroom first yesterday. Anyway, Kagome decided not to argue and left me in peace. When I woke up again, the clock read 3 in the afternoon. My fever seemed to be gone, and I genuinely felt refreshed and rested. I tried to listen to the surrounding sounds. The house was enveloped by a strange silence, even though Kagome was supposed to be back from school already. Waruyuki-san? I walked into the kitchen, but nobody was there either. The room was empty as well. Sure, Kagome could have been held up for any number of reasons. After all, she was still a class representative, and teachers know nothing of what happens outside school grounds. I opened the fridge looking for food and found a plate with tofu. I didn't seem to remember it being there yesterday. Had Kagome left something for me to eat? Still, I was really hungry, so I ate the tofu without any second thoughts. Even if I'd had a fever in the morning, it was now miraculously gone. Maybe it was just due to exhaustion, not hyperthermia. The memories of the previous night started to come back one after another, like disorganized rows of medieval soldiers heading off for war, following the whims of their petty king. Why do decisions that seemed so simple the night before become absolutely unbearable in the morning? After I finished the tofu, I washed the dishes and paced around the kitchen. Would I be better off waiting for Kagome or acting on my own? If I decided to release Ellie after all, was I supposed to tell Iwamura? If things were to go completely wrong, they'd soon come for us. Kagome had the right to know, right? I was treating all these possibilities like they were something abstract, not directly concerning me. This is the only way I can maintain the determination to do what I had to do. To imagine what's happening isn't happening to you. What could be easier? It was getting late, but neither Kagome nor Maruyuki-san had returned. What if... Anxious thought, and once entered my mind, stuck there firmly. I could no longer think of anything else. What if while I was sleeping, Ellie had managed to escape somehow? Or the police, people from the corporation, or some random person had come across her. Or the owners of the warehouse returned. Or... But why had nobody come for me then? I dashed to the hall and grabbed the phone. Kyosuke told me that Kagome sat through every class at school and then left. Everything seemed to be in order. I looked out the window, my yard, the road, Himitsu's house. Everything looked normal. It seemed unbelievable that Kagome and her grandfather had been captured while I had been left to sleep. But doubt that has found the way to one's heart can be difficult to get rid of. According to the clock, only 5 minutes had passed, but it felt much longer for me. What if they decided I wasn't going anywhere and they didn't need to hurry? Then I had to run. Right now, immediately. In a fit of panic, I leapt out into the street and froze. But run where? And wasn't I being too hot-headed? Of course I could just wait, but if Kagome and her grandfather had been captured, the longer I waited, the more danger I was in. Although there was a sure way to check what had really happened. I didn't know whether Ellie was still there. I carefully entered the back alley through the hole and walked to the station, constantly looking around. My paranoid delusions, only recently relenting, were once again hounding me. It wasn't that late, so the station was occupied by a crowd of tired Japanese people. The train would steadily spit out one group of people in order to take in another one. The workers leaving the steel monster's belly looked a little happier than the ones only just preparing to become its dinner. I was swept up by the flow and felt a bit calmer with all the hustle. When we arrived at the station, I had already descended upon Tokyo. I was dressed warmer this time, so when I walked out into the street, breathing in a lungful of the frosty, salt-filled air, I didn't feel a nasty shiver go down my spine. Kagome's burnt restaurant was just a 5-minute walk from my location, but I felt zero desire to look at the ashes at night. I turned my collar up and quickly walked towards the warehouses. Finding the right one without Kagome turned out to be no easy task. They all looked similar by default, and the darkness took it a step further, making them look like twin brothers. The warehouse looked exactly like it had last time. There was no soul around, which had already implied that Ellie was still there, in the depths of this grim building. I couldn't force myself to go in, as if I knew something bad would happen. Since I was there, it was too late to retreat. Complete darkness surrounded me as I entered the warehouse. Yeah, it doesn't look like she's there, dude. There was no sound, no movement of air. Must have been mice and other critters, but they all seemed to be sleeping, or maybe they just went silent when they heard my footsteps. I fumbled in the darkness, trying to find the place where Ellie had been last time. And I found her there after all. The girl was asleep. I stopped, not knowing what to do next. Wake her up or just leave quietly? I'd achieved my objective, found out that Ellie was still there. Plus I still felt ashamed to look her in the eyes and had nothing to say to her. I turned around to leave this horrible place, but as soon as possible, but blinded by the darkness, kicked an iron rod that responded with a piercing clang. Ellie stretched and opened her eyes. Who's there? Nick, is that you? I froze, trying not to breathe. Nick, I can see it's you. Maybe her eyes had adapted to the darkness over these days. Nick, are you alone? I thought that crazy bitch. I still couldn't reply. Nick, untie me, I beg you. I know you aren't going along with her voluntarily. Ellie stopped for a moment, then said with a strain in her voice, Untie me or you'll have to answer my grandfather. We can forget it all here and now. Nobody will suffer, except for that bitch. Yes, I had initially come here with the intention to free Ellie. Really, I was almost sure I wouldn't find her. Fortunately, it often turns out like this. You go to do the right thing with a grim look on your face, but deep down you hope everything has already been resolved without you somehow. Nick! Ellie growled in a stranger's voice. I knew I'd find you here. A familiar voice came from behind me, making my heart drop. I turned around and saw Kagome's silhouette in the darkness, slowly approaching us like a ghost, sailing across the frozen space of the warehouse. You! Ellie's cry turned into a squeal. Nico-san, we almost got our way, but you decided to mess everything up. The fuck did I do? What way did you get? I said with a strain in my voice. Kagome stopped in a spot of moonlight, wrapped her arms around herself, and looked at me reproachfully. Nico-san. But I immediately interrupted her. Maybe because I was afraid to hear what she was about to say. Where have you been the whole day? Where's Motoyuki-san? Let me go, bastards! Ellie tried to free herself from the ropes, but Kagome seemed to have forgotten about her prisoner. I had things to do. Grandfather was with me. Things? I laughed nervously. You understand what situation we're in, right? Should have at least left a note. I waited until evening and then you came here immediately. Yes, because I thought you were captured, arrested. Or maybe you just finally got an opportunity to free her. Kagome finally shifted her gaze to Ellie, actively demonstrating extreme disdain towards her. Hey, I'm still here. Don't ignore me. Ellie somewhat calmed down. Why do I have to explain myself to you at all? Yeah, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I was thinking about it a lot, and... Nick! Ellie begged, but I didn't move from my place. Ma'am, shut up. We're having an adult conversation here. What were you thinking about, Nico-san? About yourself as usual, I suppose. Have you thought about my father? Me? My feelings? Not all means can be justified by their ends. That's sophistry, Nico-san. You're trying to deprive someone of the only way they can fight back against injustice, justifying it with your old-fashioned ideas of morality. I really am happy that you're in this too. This way, you can understand at least some of my feelings. It's always easier to judge from the outside when you're not the one that has to choose whether to give up and drown or try to struggle and reach the shore. But of course you, all of you, have the right to judge what is right and what is not. What's right about the fact that everything went to shit after my mom died? I kept living like that, tolerating everything, not saying a word, putting up with her gang humiliating me, others ostracizing me. What did I do to deserve that, Nico-san? Before high school, I wasn't any better than anyone else, but I wasn't worse either. I had friends and acquaintances, a place in life, and then she suddenly broke into tears. I don't want to blame anyone for my mom's death, but sometimes it seems like someone has to be punishing me with all this. I was surprised that Kagome was so open in Ellie's presence, but I didn't dare to interrupt her. And I could have waited patiently until graduation, and then forgotten it like a nightmare, but I can't tolerate it anymore after they kidnapped my father. Why am I the only one who has to think about my own actions? Does she, or her friends, her grandfather, and his entire damn corporation? They don't need to answer to anyone. They're untouchable. And you, Nico-san, how do you act? You ended up on my side, on the victim's side, but you still came here to... She stopped, heavily breathing in the cold air and exhaling long clouds of steam. And you're still playing by their rules. You blame me, yet you're ashamed of helping me. That is what they want. Why fight people if you can make them fight each other? They teach you what's good and what's bad. They teach you to think that thing can't be different. Was it a good act to kidnap my father? Well, it's the corporation, you'd say, as if that makes anyone feel better. And if we can't hold them responsible, we just cowardly keep quiet and hide in a corner. Well, I don't want to, and won't live like that. Nick, can't you say she's not well in the head? Ellie finally interrupted Kagome's monologue. Sounds like a bad idea. Shut up, she shouted in response. You have no right to bully me, no right to take my place, no right to have Nico-san. Kagome kept talking, and at some point, it became difficult for me to follow her endless flow of words, but could clearly understand her mood and emotions. She suddenly gave me a piercing look that left no doubts about her sincerity. Kagome's eyes were gleaming with tears. I just wanted to test you. You didn't hold for even half a day. You immediately ran to her. To test me? For a moment, it seemed like you understood me, or at least that you'd be able to. Over the past 3 years, I forgot how to trust people. Unfortunately, for good reason as it turns out. Test? So Kagome deliberately took her grandfather with her and waited to see how I reacted? And I fell for the simple trick so easily. Maybe in a different situation, with a cooler head, I would have questioned the soundness of Kagome's actions. But in the heat of the moment, the sincerity of her words seemed more important. Nick, don't listen to her. Ellie's voice suddenly started to sound resigned. Nico-san, you're probably thinking you're doing the right thing, that otherwise you'd be eaten by your guilty conscience. Except doing the right thing doesn't entitle you to a reward, and my reward will be rescuing my father. So, you think that even if you get what you want, you'll just get away with it? Ellie was tied up, but her grim voice was frightening nonetheless. Grandfather will never forgive you, and you can be sure that you too won't have a life in Japan. He really does love his granddaughter. Kagome suddenly smirked, turned to Ellie and looked down at her for the first time today. Are you surprised by that? How I'd love to change places with you, to see how you survive alone without money or status. I at least wouldn't kidnap anyone. Like your grandfather didn't kidnap my father, right? Or like your friends didn't burn my restaurant down. She looked at me. It's all about ifs again, Nico-san. Meanwhile, I was no longer at all sure that I wanted to let Ellie go. That I wanted to do it right now, for Kagome to see. You want... They have my hair and neck. Yeah. Ellie's voice was reaching deep into my heart, wounding it deeper than I could bear. But Kagome's monologue had planted a seed of doubt in my mind. It made me rethink what had seemed so obvious. I'm not the one who started it. I shouldn't be the one to deal with it. The words sounded cowardly, but seemed to be the best course of action for the time being.